My daughter Grace woke up sick last night several times. And this morning I came to work early and I was texting my wife to see if I need to come back and get them. And she texted me a picture of Grace laying face down in the kitchen, just like this. And she said, I just overheard Grace say, God, please heal my tummy. I didn't bring that up to take this moment to brag on my child, though that's a great thing to do. I bring that up because I was overcome with emotions, not just that my daughter isn't feeling well, but that this is a place where lots of you constantly remind her that there's a God you can trust who cares about her, and it's the first thing she thinks of because of you. And I want to speak as a parent and say there is nothing more important I can think of than providing the right environment for my children. And you've been an answer to my prayer. So thank you. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. That's the way it's worded in Exodus 20 and in Deuteronomy 5. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You know, I know it doesn't seem like it at first, but you can break all the other commandments with words. Jesus tells us that. You know, you think, oh, I haven't actually done the deed. I haven't murdered anybody. And he says, yes, but if you're angry in your heart, don't you know that that's the same thing? And if you say to your brother, Raka, you fool, it's as if you've already committed the thing that you're saying you didn't do. So there's a way in which with your words you can already show the very thing that you said you were trying to avoid. But this is the first one where the focus really is on the words that come out of your mouth. It's a law court scene. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. We know that words matter. James chapter 3 is the first passage that came to my mind, thinking about the power of words. Listen to what he says. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle his whole body. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships. Though they're so large and are driven by strong winds, they're guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. James spends at least 10 verses trying to get us to see that what we say matters. Jesus backs this up. Matthew chapter 12, beginning in verse 34, he says, how can you say what is good when you are evil? Out of your heart flows who you really are, and in fact, on the day of judgment, you will have to give an account for every idle word. What's he getting at? Words count. Words have consequences. Proverbs 18, verse 21, life and death are in the power of the tongue. So I'm trying to explain why this one makes it into the Big Ten. You know, there's a lot of things God could have focused on. And he knew that these were going to be the ones that we're going to be teaching our kids in Sunday school. And so it was important that the Big Ten actually be Big Ten. Why is this making in? There are few things that come to my mind when I try to emphasize what is essential to being human. When you try to think about what makes us different than the rest of creation, you start naming some things. One of the things you probably should bring up is speech. I don't mean that the animal world doesn't talk. In fact, Henry has this great line. Henry can only do bees. And so when I say tweet, tweet, the only way I know that he's actually trying to do the voice of a bird is that it's a high pitch. Because he'll be ba, 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 and I'll say tweet, tweet, and I go ba, ba. And that means some bird is tweeting out there. But speech, forming our words to express our emotions and our thoughts and to make arguments by which we can reason, speech, it's a human quality. So using speech to spread lies dehumanizes people. This is why James says that what you do with your words include blessing the Father, but cursing those made in the very image of God. Proverbs 25 and verse 18 says, a false witness is like a club or a sword or a sharp arrow. There are a few topics in the book of Proverbs talked about more than the power of the tongue. You go through Proverbs and you'll see wise use of the tongue is imperative. If you want to train your child to be a wise child, that's what the book of Proverbs is all about. Teach them to be wise with the tongue. If you say too much, you might get in trouble. If you say too little, you may not be chosen for what you need. Smooth words can win over kings, and they can also be deceptive ways to manipulate others and cover up the truth. Words can be so deceptive. One book I was reading had this great line. It said, "We seldom lie without a backup plan." That's somewhere in the back of our mind, we say to ourselves, we seldom sin without a backup plan. Somewhere in the back of our minds, we say, I can always lie my way through this if I get caught. James says the tongue is a fire and sets a whole course. How is that possible? Well, when you take angry thoughts, and you put it into words, you've just unleashed a monster. It's like ammunition sitting on the table, but now you've put it into a gun. And it now has a certain kind of control in your life. It's amazing how anger and bitterness and rage and those things, once they're given words, suddenly now you can explain to yourself, justify to yourself why holding on to those things is important. And it begins to shape the way you view others. As long as you can't put words to it, it may stay nebulous and never actually reveal itself. But words bring things to life. In a sermon that Tim Keller preached many years ago, he said, I want to change the children's nursery rhyme to this. Sticks and stones can only break my bones, but words can pollute, corrupt, and kill my very soul. Doesn't rhyme as well, but it's more accurate. Words matter. Proverbs 12 and verse 18, reckless words can cut like a sword, but wise words bring healing. And in our text, the ninth word of the Big Ten is a law court scene. Bearing false witness. The verb here can also be answer. So the idea here is, how will you respond when asked about your neighbor for the record? Bearing false witness can murder your brother. It can destroy his good name. Let's talk literally. How many times in court has a false witness led to the execution of an innocent person? Or how about a false word that destroys someone's company and reputation, causes them to take their own life? Words can kill. But it also can just take away all the things that in your mind make you you. Your reputation, your livelihood, your money, your job, your family. That's why God hates it. Look in Proverbs 6, beginning in verse 16. The proverb writer is trying to lay out the big six. There are 6 things that the Lord hates, and then he says, well, let's add a 7th. 7 that are an abomination to him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. If you think about the fact that we're made in the image of God, and that Jesus says, whoever confesses me before men, I'll confess before my Father. Whoever denies me before men, I will deny before my Father. We start recognizing that Jesus said that as a human. He became one of us, and then he said those words. And so put all that together and realize that to spread false witness is to deny our brother before men. To spread false witness is to pronounce condemnation to that which is made in the image of God. But Jesus says, I am in your brother. What you do the least of these, you do to me. And now we see the full picture. We know that a false witness hurts our neighbor. And now we know that it hurts God. But did you know that in the long run, it hurts yourself? What you do when you say something that isn't true is that you announce that there's nothing sacred about being human. When you say something that isn't true about another human, when you dehumanize another human, you say there's nothing sacred about being human. And that reverberates because, as I learned in kindergarten, when you point a finger, there's 3 pointing right back at you. If you dehumanize humanity, then you've dehumanized yourself. You suggest that being made in the image of God is not a thing to accept, which then means that you're taking the name of the Lord in vain. Do you see how they all tie together? Bearing false witness ends up dehumanizing, thus claiming we are not worthy of his name. How do we bear false witness? That's the big question. There's a couple of ways. We can bear false witness when we falsely bear the witness of what's going on inside. Now, that's closer to something more like lying than the court of law. But that happens all the time. Think of all the ways in which we justify not telling the truth. The older you get, the more you realize that there are usually exceptions to the rule. But you also learn that exceptions make bad law. And the moment that someone says, there's probably some case somewhere where that might be reasonable, and you find yourself in a jam, you will quickly think that you are the exception to the rule. So I'm going to name some things that we do, and instead of letting your mind go to, well, there's probably a good reason why I do that sometimes, realize that when that becomes your default all the time, you recognize the problem. What about polite lies? I'd love to go, but I have a commitment that night. No, you would hate to go, and you have no idea if you have a commitment that night. But it sounds nice. I think that if I were to explain that, they wouldn't understand, and that's why I didn't tell them. Oh man, what would she think of me if I told her the truth? So I'll just keep that to myself. Do you know what comes? What comes from shading the truth, from hiding behind, from not letting truth be our story? A couple of things come from that, and one of them is we create new worlds. This is James's point about the fire and the course and all that. We create new worlds. There was a philosopher years ago named Immanuel Kant who always thought that there should be a rule for everything. And he thought that if you can't imagine a world where somebody on one occasion might lie to get what they want, which then means that you might lie to get what you want, which then means that on every occasion, somebody might think it's reasonable for them to lie to get what they want, you would live in a world in which nobody could trust anybody anymore. Therefore, it is always, always, always wrong to lie. That was his view. What I think he was trying to say is, would you want to imagine a world where lies was the rule of the day? You go to pay your bill and you get a piece of paper telling you how much you owe, but you have no idea if that's true. You call the bank to see how much money's in your account, and they tell you, but you have no idea if they're telling you the truth. Your spouse says, I love you, but you have no idea if they really do. It's a horrible world to live in. Our lies create new worlds. Joy Davidman married C.S. Lewis. They were both later in life when they got married. And she wrote a book. And in that book, she said, there are lies of gossip which make haters out of us. There are lies of advertising which make money out of us. There are lies of politicians which make power out of us. Because lies create monsters. And they pollute the pool in which we swim. And then after a while, we begin to think we have to join that in order to kind of keep up. Lies create new worlds. And they trample on our dignity. They make us think of other people as always in a need-to-know basis, which means I have power over you, and you're a child to me. You don't deserve the truth. We don't say that, but that's what we mean. You don't deserve the truth. What about when we exaggerate in order to deceive? What about when we are duplicitous? What about when we share stories about people that can't possibly be corroborated? Do I want to wade into social media? This week, I have learned that every one of my friends is a geopolitical expert. Have you discovered that? It's amazing. And as soon as we hear a story that makes our guy sound good and your guy sound bad, we post it. And what I want to know is, do we feel deep shame when we find out that it never happened to begin with? Or do we think, well, that kind of thing happens all the time? Not realizing we've contributed to creating a new world. What happens when we hear something that can't possibly be corroborated, but it plays into the narrative we want to share, and the narrative is anything but holding up our brother or our sister? I attended a gathering a couple weekends ago, I believe. A couple of you were there. Some elders came there, and the speaker said, I'm noticing something in some churches. He said, I'm noticing that, not so much in church, but you'll see church people when they're talking on social media, that they're more likely to stand with and for people who share their social, economic, or political leanings. than with the people who sit right next to them in the pew on Sunday. I want you to think about that for a second. I thought that can't possibly be true. And then I saw it firsthand. Scrolling's never a healthy thing to do, but you find someone who's saying, I don't know this person. All I know is they're a brother in Christ, but that goes against what I think about other things, so I'm going to hold you suspect. In other words, I don't know what the truth is, but our brotherhood is low on the totem pole. What happens when we think to ourselves, I'm just a middleman, I'm just a messenger, we're all swimming in the same stream? No. When we open our mouths, we create new worlds. And the question is, are we interested in gossip and slander and false things that dehumanize other human beings in the name of something else? And what is that other thing? It can't possibly be higher. I think another way that we bear false witness is when we fail to recognize that every one of these thou shalt not commandments is meant to flip the script. So when he says don't commit adultery, he also means really love your spouse. When he says, don't steal, he means really be grateful for what you have. And when he says don't bear false witness, the other side of that is really be for your neighbor. Be for them. Be a character witness for them. If you can't be a character witness for them, be a character witness for humanity. Sometimes we fail to be for. Can you imagine how you would feel if God changed every verse of the Bible that says, I am for you to, well, at least I'm not against you? I can't think of anything really bad to say about you. You know the verses that really bring you comfort in the difficult moments of life. I am with you. I am for you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Can you imagine a world where the way we talked gave the impression that's what we want to be true about every person made in the image of God? So how do we fix this? Ephesians 4 and verse 15 provides the antidote. If you'll turn there with me. Ephesians 4:15. He says earlier in verse 14, we don't want to be children tossed to and fro by the waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning and craftiness, but rather speak the truth in love, whereby we grow up in every way unto him who is the head, unto Christ. I see three things here. Number one, speak the truth. It is not loving to bear false witness. And that includes, it's not loving to bear false witness to help your friend out of a jam. It's not loving to say happy, kind, nice things about evil. It's not loving to bear false witness in any way. Love without truth is not really love. If you walk by a burning building and someone is inside and doesn't know their house is on fire, and you think it might really hurt their feelings if I let them know, that's not love. So we speak the truth. Number two, speak the truth in love. Manner and attitude matters. When someone says, look, I just got to get this off my chest, beware. If we're only speaking truth because we can't wait to spew facts regardless of what it might do to somebody, we're not speaking truth, we're speaking facts. Listen carefully to the difference. Truth is a moral category. So truth, capital T truth, came to earth. In John chapter 8, He said, you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. And he was not talking about a list of doctrines. A few verses later, he says, if the Son sets you free, then you're free indeed. I am the way, the life, and the truth. Capital T, truth. Speaking the truth in love is more than spouting facts. It's speaking Christ in ways that will benefit and help our brethren. That's why number 3, speak the truth in love as it aids us to grow up in him. There's a kind of truthfulness that's actually repugnant to God, and that's a truth where the goal is anything other than to walk alongside, bear with, serve with, and share in the grace of Christ. Every Christian should be the go-to person for anybody in any situation when they say, I'll tell you who will speak noble, good truths about me. And you can take what they say to the bank because they're a Christian. Thank you.